Windows and doors add character to your home, so now we'll show you how to install them properly.
You want to go at least 8-10 inches past the edge of the window. This even with the top of the windowsill. If you notice, we're not going to press this down against the plywood because we'll be putting this on top of our siding then, so water can run down on top of the siding. Always put a bead of silicone the whole entire way around the window. And it's important to get a 1/4 inch shim set on the bottom to keep the window up off of the windowsill so you can get insulation in underneath there. And then when I set this in, I'm going to center the window from side to side. As a structure built on wheels, it is required to have tempered glass for safety on the road. Be sure to order your windows correctly with tempered glass. This end needs to go up 1/8. We always start with the bottom, make sure everything is level in the bottom. And then he's inside with the shims, and this end had to go up 1/8. Now I double check it. That's good. It's center on either way. So I'm gonna put a nail on each corner. Once you have a nail on each corner, then you check the sides. That's good. It's very important before you finish nailing the window. He's inside, he's going to open the window and just double check everything. Although I leveled the bottom and the sides are plumb, he's going to double check, make sure everything is square and the reveal is good. Perfect. Everything locks well, so I can go ahead and finish nailing, and I'll be nailing in every hole. Now that we have the window properly installed, we're going to finish flashing around the window. You want to make sure you're up past here at least 2 to 3 inches. And down past here at least 2 to 3 inches. If you notice, it goes out past a little bit to make sure that no water comes in there. And then the reason I said 2 to 3 inches is just so it overlaps on top of this flashing. This can be pressed down against the plywood. Now I'm going to put the top piece on. You want to make sure it's at least even or out past on the left. Same on the right. Ta-da! As you can see, we have the window installed and all the flashing around the window. So now we're ready to do the siding and the trim around the windows. So what I'm going to demonstrate for you now is how we did the trim around the windows. Now there's different options, but in this option I'll show you how we did this. For the bottom, we beveled this. It is a 12 degree. And the reason for that is when you put that on like this, when the water comes down, it runs out instead of back into your window. That way that sits right there. And the way we install that, we have 3-inch stainless steel screws. And the reason we use stainless steel is because they do not rust. And when they're in here, you don't have the rust running down the side of your siding. And for the bottom here, if you remember, we had the strap all the way around the house. So you're gonna have a problem with your screw going through the strap. And that is why I have this drill. I will have to drill holes on the bottom here so that I can go through the strap and my screw will go. On the sides, you don't have to worry about that because you don't have that strap and your flange you can go through. Now that I have the bottom installed, you're ready to get your measurement for the side pieces. And what I did here, since this is on an angle, I'm going to hold my tape all the way in against the wall And then up top here, give it about a 1/16 of an inch. You'd rather want to be a little bit long than short. So in this case, it's 36 3/16. And then what I did is I cut a bevel on the end of a 2x4. Here again, it's a 12 degree. And then you hook on the very short point and you measure the 36 3/16. Now you see I have a little notch right here. The reason for that is the flange of the window sticks out about a 1/16 of an inch. So if you don't do that, it's gonna rock back and forth like this. So when you go to tighten it, it's just gonna look funny and out of square like down here in the bottom. So we notch this out so that when we put it on, it doesn't rock like that. That allows the flange to go inside here. Then you just put this on, go all the way down against. Since this is beveled and this is on an angle, this all comes together nicely. Then we put 2 screws here, 2 screws here, and 2 screws here. And on the very bottom here, on the sill, we go up with 2 screws as well. That helps this sill to be sturdy and to keep it from dropping off. Now that we have the sides installed, we're ready for the top. Now the top is going to be the same measurement, same size as the bottom piece, but it's going to be different. As you can see on the top piece, we did the same thing as we did on the sides. We made a little notch for your flange. Now the reason we only did the top and the 2 sides is because they are wider than the bottom. The bottom we didn't have to because it's only 1.5 inches, and that's about how wide your flange is. So your bottom isn't going to rock back and forth the way this is. Here again, I did a bevel, a 12 degree bevel for the top, and that's going to sit up top here. I put that on like this. In this case, we did a 1/2 inch out either side. That's totally up to each person how you want to do that. This just adds a little bit of character. And for the very top, we did a 1x, ripped a 1x down and did a bevel on the very back of it, 12 degrees as well. And we put that right on top. That way it gives you a cap, and when water runs on here, it has a place to go and it comes out instead of back.
One of the uniquest parts of this design for the Cypress is this large bay window across the front. It requires a special touch when you're installing these windows. So Dave, let's explain how you're doing it.
Okay, what we did is, if you notice, we cut the same kind of sill as we have on the bottom of the other windows. So it's sloped 12 degrees. And then we put a 1x board the whole entire way around the window. And we did like a 3/8 reveal the whole way around, stuck it out past the window frame. And that gives us a slam strip to put the window up against.
Beautiful.
All right, so one thing I want to point out is we kept the window out over the sill 3/4 of an inch. So if any water comes in here, it'll run down off of the sill instead of coming back in. You do not want to set the window back in like this because the water will run off the face of the window and it'll run down behind the siding, and it could potentially damage the plywood.
It took us all.
We'll change it. One important thing to know when you're installing these windows is that waterproofing is extremely difficult because these are not traditionally framed windows that come with a pre-installed frame. What the Fishers have done with this sloping ledge is create a drip edge. They've created a situation where the only place that water is going to migrate is to the outside of the house. Another important thing to know is that they don't have any exposed caulk on the outside.
Okay, we're getting ready to install the Velux skylight now. So we have a guy inside that's going to tell us when it's center, up and down, and back and forth. Good. So what he just did is he told us when it's center of the opening on all 4 sides. And we recommend using screws. You just screw it down through these holes right here. You're probably wondering why we cut the paper the whole way around the outside of this skylight. The reason we did that is to take this sticky flashing stuff that came with the skylight and paste it right on the plywood. Another important thing when you're putting this flashing on is to make sure that it is up the sides underneath that rubber gasket. You just cut the corner, bend that around. Like that. Another important tip is to always start from the bottom because water runs downhill, obviously. So you start at the bottom, then the top piece overlaps the bottom, and so forth. You just work your way up. When water comes down, it just continues to go all the way down to the drip edge. Okay, we're gonna start putting the flashing around the skylight. All Velux skylights have a rubber gasket on the bottom. So you wanna make sure that's up, slide this up into place, and then this rubber gasket goes down over that flashing. When you have it up into place, is put a nail up top on each side, and you don't wanna put any, go ahead. You don't want to put any nails or screws or anything in this general flashing area right here. You want to make sure you don't put any nails or screws inside this lip right here. When you put this in place, you just want to put 2 tacks up in the top, and that will hold it in place. Okay, now that we have the bottom piece and the 2 side pieces on, we're ready to slide it up into place. And it just stays there like that. You don't put any screws or anything in. So when you put the top piece in place, you have to make sure this piece and this piece slide in underneath this. Still, it has to be on top of this piece, but it goes in between these grooves. Slide it straight down. And this lip right here has to be on top of this stationary lip here. Now you'll get a bag of screws and nails with it. Take the 2 brown screws, put 1 on each side in this hole that I pointed out before. Once you have it in place, bring it down, take this little tab, slide it up, and bend it around, just like that. Then you put these 2 brown screws, 1 screw in each side, right in this pre-drilled hole. And that fastens the sides and the top. And then you want to take these clips that came in that little blue bag, clip it right on the side, and again, you don't want to put any nails down on this bottom piece of flashing. So clip that on here, put a nail in that hole, and there again, you make sure you don't put any puncture hole in this piece of flashing. So when we put this next piece of metal on, we want to make sure that we don't put any screws in through this metal flashing and that it's all out on this rubber gasket right here. So just for extra protection, we have this rubber flashing here, we have this rubber flashing here. We're gonna put an extra bead of silicone right around the area where we're gonna put a screw in. So we know where to put the bead of silicone. We're gonna snap a line about 1.5 inches down from the edge of this metal. Okay, so we know we're going to put a screw beside the ribs. Okay, so that's where I'm going to put this bead of silicone. Beside the ribs, on the line. Another important thing is to not put any more screws here than absolutely necessary. So I would only put 1 screw beside each rib. when you're putting metal on, if you use this style metal, that you get closure strips, and you put it on the bottom, and what it is, see this little hump right here? That goes in underneath this rib to close it off for like bees and bugs and all that stuff to get up in. So anytime you have a spot like that, you have to make sure you have those on. And the same goes for top of a skylight, like right here. Okay, if you notice on this side flashing, there's a groove right here, and what that's for is to slip this piece of metal in between that groove. That way you don't need to put a screw right there, and it'll keep it from blowing off.
So skylight installation can be a little bit tricky, but they do add a lot of beauty to your home, especially in the loft where you can maybe see the stars as you're sleeping at night. But the other thing is that when on the outside, you want to pay attention to how it looks. Aesthetics are important on such a tiny house because a lot of people will actually be seeing your roof, unlike larger homes where the roof might be high enough that it's out of the way and you're not actually going to see the skylight very much. So one aesthetic choice that the Shedyard brothers have made is to have this extra piece come across the bottom. A normal skylight installation is fine if you just leave it like this with this apron exposed. But this extra piece here, while not actually protecting from water or not adding any additional waterproofing, just cleans it up a little bit and makes it look very nice. The other thing that the Shedyard brothers have chosen to do is to pre-drill the panels when they had them in a stack on the ground. So they pre-drilled the holes next to the rib for each screw. And what happens is as the roofing is installed, you see that there's a nice crisp line of screws and that they're very evenly spaced. It's very important if you choose to do this that you make sure that in each hole that's been pre-drilled, you actually have a fastener. The fastener has a little gasket around the bottom of the screw head, and that little gasket is what provides the waterproofing. If you don't put a fastener into that hole, then your roof will actually have a small leak in it.
Okay, we're going to be working on flashing the porch area and this front door so no water gets into the house or gets in underneath the subfloor to rot anything out. Okay, what I did is I took a 3/8 inch piece of plywood, cut it down to fit in between the door frame opening, and what that does, it does two things. It gives it more room on the inside to put your flooring up to it so the door doesn't scrape when you have a rug on the inside. And we use 3/4 inch flooring, and the subfloor is 3/4 inch. So if I were to not put this in place, the deck and the subfloor would be perfectly even. So if water would come down on the porch, it would splash in and it could go in underneath the door. So I created a little bit of a ledge right here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some of this rubber flashing and I'm going to put it the whole way around here to keep water from going in underneath and in underneath the door. And it's very important to make sure this is pressed down into the corner. You take your knife, cut the corners, lay this down. Okay, now we've created a waterproof ledge there. Right now, there's like a 1/4 inch offset here, so water comes on here, it'll go down here, and right down to the bottom. I'm gonna cut 2 little pieces, this right on the corner. Seal this corner. You don't want to cut any of that. Okay, now we're going to install the deck boards, and to get the proper measurement, we're going to be putting 1.5 inch corner on here. So you want to put the edge of the deck, you want to go out 1.5 inches so that the edge of the deck is even with the corner. If you notice, I'm going to be screwing down through this flashing right here, and I can do that and it'll still be waterproof because it's a rubberized flashing. Important thing is to make sure your threshold is clean. And you take some silicone caulk. Make sure you put a good bead, go up about 4 inches on the side. Put a good bead on the bottom. We're going to go ahead and put it in place. You want to make sure you're flush with the outside of the sheeting. We get a level and we plumb it. Make sure it's good back and forth. And you want to center on your opening so you can get insulation the whole way around the opening. I'm going to take some shims to create a gap between the door frame and the door opening. I'm going to put it at each hinge. And I'm going to make sure that's level. Yep, we're good. And what you want to do is take a 3-inch screw. You want to put a screw where each hinge is. So you do that on that side. Okay, so we'll do that on all 3 hinges. You want to hold the level in place while you're putting these shims in. Fit it in between. There again, you do 3 different spots. If you notice, I have 3 shims here. Hold my level on here. You want to make sure that the jamb is perfectly straight. And you want to go in behind, stripping, just like that. Put a screw at each shim.
The front door of your tiny house is the first thing that's going to greet your visitors as they come to tour your tiny house. So it's important to make sure that your door is just as aesthetically pleasing as the rest of your house. In the plans, we call for a certain way of building something. However, we happen to have a master carpenter on hand, and Pop has showed us some new tricks in terms of building this door. He's actually built this as a mortise and tenon construction, and what that means is that he has taken the saw and he has used 1 block of wood. This would be the mortise, and this piece here is the tenon. And they fit together very nicely like this, and they create a very strong joint. Now, Pop Fisher used to be a cabinet maker, and so this is one of the methods that he would use on his cabinets. So he has actually taken that and applied it to this door. So I wanted to show you some of the details in case you felt like you would be up to this challenge. It does require a little more master carpentry skills than what we call for in the Tumbleweed plans. You'll see here that he has a single sash, which is matching all of the other windows that are on the house already. And he has mortised out the sides of the window, and he has actually fitted it into the tenons on either side. This piece here would be the top piece, and these sections would actually fit down into there, and then this piece here actually slides in and holds the window solidly. Another thing that Pop has done is down here in the center stile. Now the center stile is slightly beveled, and so will the one at the bottom be slightly beveled so that as rain or other elements of nature hit it, it will run off instead of sitting against the window pane in your door. Additionally, this bottom panel he's also modified. On the plans it calls to use the tongue and groove, the same tongue and groove that you're using on the interior of your house. But Pop was not quite a fan of that technique. What he did was he used a 24-inch piece of solid edge-glued pine. And that piece that he's used, he actually modified to make it look like a tongue and groove by running it through the table saw. He actually put the saw blade at a 45-degree angle, and then he had it just barely peeking up, and then he ran his panels down this way, and he did that on 4-inch centers. So the result is that this panel will look like a tongue and groove, even though it's a solid piece of pine. A solid piece of pine like this is going to move with the weather. It's going to shrink and expand, and that gluing it would actually cause more damage than leaving it to float inside. So what he plans to do is back nail this from the other side of the door, and he will just nail it a little bit at the center on top and bottom. These will be the only fasteners that he uses for the center panel. The remaining pieces of the door, including the 2 side stiles and the rails that connect both of the side stiles, will be primed and then glued together using a high-strength construction adhesive. After it's cured, then the door will be painted, the fasteners and the deadbolt will be installed, and then it will be put into place. Pop has been working on this door for quite a few hours today, and he's an experienced cabinet maker. If you're up to the challenge, this would be a wonderful way to create a unique entry to your home. If you're not quite up to this challenge, then please refer to your plans that Tumbleweed has provided for how to make a door that's just as strong and sturdy, but takes a little less intense carpentry skills. Windows and doors are difficult to install, but they're well worth the time and effort. I hope you've learned enough to feel confident as you install yours on your tiny home. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at tumbleweedhouses.com.